So this device, I haven't really had a very good track record together. It has been absolutely hellish troubleshooting this thing for a variety of reasons, but I was determined to get it to work, and it finally does work, after so much tinkering, googling, watching tutorials, waiting for parts, and even getting ROMs in there. But this is a really cool device, once it's actually working, and it comes with a neat dock to complete the experience here. So introducing the GPi Case 2. The vein of my existence, but I do really like it at the end of the day. Let's dive right in. The exterior design consists of plastic for the entirety of the build. This feels very nice in hands with a grittier texture to the surface that makes it very easy, I want to say, to hold without a doubt. It's not very hefty though, because there isn't really much hardware inside, but it's still a comfortable weight for handheld play, and it is built really well after all. Now on the front you're going to find your usual set of buttons, which all feel very satisfying to press. The D-pad also feels great, but it feels a bit too small for my liking, which makes my movement pretty imprecise at times. So in practice, I don't love this D-pad, and I really wish that it was bigger. You definitely have the room after all. The triggers on the back are terrible and hard to press, so I prefer to play games that simply don't require them at all. On the bottom, you're going to find a headphone jack and a USB-C port. On the top, there's a power switch and a display on and off toggle. On the right, there's a volume wheel. On the left, there's a brightness or contrast wheel, and that's really it. From the outset, it might seem like a pretty simple device, but let's keep going. So the hardware setup is the easiest part configuring this device. So chances are that your device won't come with a CM4 Lite or micro SD card at all, so that's when we get to tinkering. So you have to install the Lite model specifically, which is really hard to find right now. And this is because the GPi Case 2 will not work with any other version, as having eMMC storage seems to conflict with the SD card storage. But you can't just use one or the other, it has to be the SD card. So you have to depend on the SD card here. But I plugged in a 64GB card and move forward with that. So once turned on and fully set up, you do get to appreciate this fantastic 4x3 display. So it is one of the best I've seen around because it gets so bright. It's so colorful and everything does look really sharp on it. This display is absolutely beautiful for all types of games. The viewing angles are also extremely solid here. They just did a really good job with this screen. Though I do have some dead pixels, and well, it's not really enough that it bothers me, but they are there. And they are kind of easy to see, but otherwise it's a great screen. Now, software setup is really annoying from my experience. There's a lot that needs to get done before this device is up and running, so this is not for people who want a plug-and-play solution, like at all. The most annoying part about the software overall is honestly how you transfer games to this device. So you can't just plug in the SD card into your PC and go. You have to connect them over Wi-Fi, and since the CM4 Lite that I was able to get doesn't come with Wi-Fi, I had to use an adapter for it, and it's got a lot of reliability issues. So I connected these two over the network, and that connection really only lasts a few seconds, which is really barely enough time to download Game Boy Color games. So I couldn't download any PlayStation 1 games, sadly, but this method is so tedious. I genuinely hated this experience. It just seems overly complicated for no good reason, just to install ROMs. And this isn't even the end of it. I've had a lot of issues with the GPi Case 2 before, primarily because of the shortage of CM4 units right now. I received a unit that worked at first and shortly after just stopped working on the same day, so I had to return it. I had to purchase a different one that does have eMMC storage, but it didn't work obviously at all with this unit. And finally I found the CM4 Lite for 80 bucks, which is way overpriced for what it is. Now the OS is going to be RetroPie, and it looks pretty incredible on this device with a great menu. So this supports a ton of different systems, so they should show up for you if you have any ROMs installed. It's such a simple and easy to manage OS and interface once it's set up that it really does feel like you've accomplished something great here, because it takes a lot to actually get it to work. Now let's go ahead and talk about performance, and this will be a limited section because unfortunately there are a lot of problems when it comes to transferring games. There is a small window, like I mentioned earlier, in which both my PC and my GPi Case 2 are actually connected over Wi-Fi, and it's so small that I can only transfer really tiny games without issues. So only Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance games made it fully through, so that's all I could really test. I do not know why this is the case, but it's easily the most frustrating thing about this device. We should be able to just transfer games over the SD card, like literally every other retro handheld that I have ever tested. But with that aside, the Game Boy Color experience is absolutely beautiful. I mean, this looks like a Game Boy, it feels like a Game Boy, and it's certainly modeled after one. So Game Boy Color games are just an absolute blast here, and they feel right at home, more than they do so on any other retro handheld I have tested so far. I wanted this setup mostly so that I could play Pokemon Yellow and relive those days from my childhood when this was all I had. It's really nice here, and the fact that you only need the face buttons is perfect because the face buttons are great, but the D-pad is a bit small, which causes a lot of imprecise movements, like I mentioned earlier. So if you wanted this device for its form factor, design, but wanted a backlight for your display so that you can play Game Boy Color games at night and under any lighting conditions, then this is probably exactly what you're looking for. Performance in Game Boy Advance is also very good here. It runs every game perfectly fine, and I know that this device can also be pushed to play N64 and PS1 games, but again, I couldn't get a solid Wi-Fi connection between my PC and it, so couldn't transfer those ROMs at all. But GPi does look and run very nicely regardless of which game you're playing. This was no problem for this device, and I can confidently recommend it unless you're playing a game that requires the use of the triggers, because I really struggle to press them, but that depends on the person, I suppose. So another thing that I wanted to mention is that you can purchase this device with a dock, which includes a USB-C port for power, an HDMI port for display, and two USB-A ports for accessories. It is nicely weighed, which is nice, but does it really work? It didn't work for me, for some reason. I feel like my unit might have some issues because the dock doesn't appear to work properly with it, so I always get a black screen. So unfortunately, I couldn't test any of the accessories and controllers that I wanted to try out with this device, and that's definitely a huge bummer. But I have seen it work for a bunch of other people, so I really don't know what's going on here. Now, the battery life on this device is pretty good. I would say that a solid 4 hours of gameplay is doable on it, and I don't have any complaints about its portable energy consumption so far, even though I have only been playing very lightweight games on it. So with that said, I do have to say that I don't know if all of this stress and tinkering was worth what I ultimately got. I think that I either did something wrong in the setup or just got a faulty unit. It could either be the case itself, the dock, the CM4, it could be one of many different components that are messing with the experience, even with the Wi-Fi dongle, probably. That could probably be the issue, but with that said, I do have a tough time recommending this device. This is for people who really like to tinker and to troubleshoot. It really isn't very easy here. At least from my experience, and the components, especially the CM4, is very expensive right now, so it's not really worth it. I mean, I spent close to $200 on this thing. I will keep tinkering with it so that hopefully someday I can get the most out of it, but for now, I can't recommend it. But if you wanted an alternative, then get the Anbernic RG353V or the 353VS for a vertical handheld experience that is definitely much more flexible, lets you transfer ROMs a lot more easily, and that is already configured for you. So with that said, that's pretty much my verdict when it comes to the GPi Case. I didn't have a very good experience with it, even though I really like it for Game Boy Color because that's the main purpose I wanted it to serve. It's not worth spending $200 just to play Game Boy Color games on it, you know? So thank you so much for watching this video all the way up until the very end. I do very much appreciate it. If you have any tips as to what I can do to improve my experience with it, then please let me know in the comments. And if you have any questions, do let me know in the comments as well. I will do my best to answer them, of course. And if you aren't interested in getting a CM4 like the CM4 that I got, a GPi Case, if you want to try this out yourself, I will still leave affiliate links to Amazon, so if you use my links, you would be helping out the channel quite a bit, so I would appreciate that. I'll also try to see if I can leave affiliate links to the RG353V and the VS, in case you wanted to give that a try instead, which again, that's what I do recommend. Also, please make sure to follow me on Instagram, where I do post every now and then, and I do also have a vlogging channel, which has pretty much become a Yu-Gi-Oh channel at this point, but yeah, links to everything down below. Now with that said, this has been Francisco from Tech Summit. Thank you for watching, and until next time, enjoy.